Straight all day.
You're now tuned into the best experience you could be experiencing. That's in any form of media. This is the show where you learn the discipline required to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you have expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. This is that go-getter energy, you know what I mean? That moves you to make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Putting all this together, what you get is the mindset, the method, the podcast known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day. Welcome to the show. Today's topic is how to give advice to someone who thinks they already know everything. How do you give advice to somebody who thinks they know more than you know? How do you give advice to somebody who you see that they need the advice, you have the advice, you know that you can give it to them, you know it would benefit them, you know they need to hear it, you know they need to learn it, and you know they need to apply it, but this person doesn't seem very interested. They're just not that into hearing you give advice. They just don't seem to be too open to it. What do you do in such a situation? Now I want to thank Barrett via LinkedIn. He actually sent me this message on LinkedIn asking me this question, and I told him that I might get around to actually recording this, so I am getting around to that. So thank you, Barrett, for asking the question. People ask me questions all the time. Often I've already addressed them, but this is one I hadn't addressed, so that's why I thought about this one. His specific question, Barrett said, how do you give advice to someone who thinks they know more than you? And this is a good idea, this question here. So I'm making this episode here to answer that question once and for all. So if anyone in the future, 10 years from now, has this question, they ask me or they Google it, they'll be able to find this material. This is a show topic that I haven't covered, but I can see the viability in the issue because I think a lot of us deal with this, especially those of us who are on the path of this path of personal development, which is, I define it as voluntarily taking actions to make yourself a better and more valuable individual. Voluntarily is the key phrase. Meaning, I'm not talking about going to school where you're forced to get smarter, or at least if you want to call it that, by studying in class or taking notes, or if your parents force some things on you, or just anything that's forced on you involuntarily, you have to do it. That's not what I'm talking about. Personal development is when you choose to do it, when you choose to listen to a podcast instead of listening to a mixtape, when you choose to read a book instead of reading a gossip blog, when you choose to attend a weekend seminar and get that knowledge instead of doing something other than that that's not going to make you a more valuable person. So those of us, and I think the person I'm describing is a person who listens to this podcast, because there's a lot of things you could be listening to, but you chose to listen to this one, and we appreciate that. Anyone who's listening to this, I think you fall into that category of being on this track of personal development, and you probably, I'm going to guess, have some people in your life who are not on this track. Some people who are not into personal development. They're not into really doing things to make themselves more valuable. They would like to be more valuable. If you talk to them about it, they would agree, but they don't seem to really, they're not really serious about it. Like, they want it, but they don't really want it. I don't think I had to describe that too much. You know exactly who you probably have some people in your life that I'm describing right now. You're thinking of them right now. You don't even be looking at this individual right now. And you know exactly who they are and what they need, but they don't seem too open to hearing anything from you. Maybe not from anybody else either. Somebody who obviously needs information, but they're not so quite open to listening. How do you get through that person's thick ass head that they don't want to hear the stuff that you know that they need to know? How do we do this? Let's get into it. Point number one. Today's topic again is how to give advice to somebody who thinks they know it all. Stop trying. Yes, that was the answer. I'm letting the cat out of the bag right up front. If there is somebody in your life, or who you know, however you know them, who you know they need some information, some advice, they need to hear some things, they need a good talking to, but you know also that they're not too open to hearing you tell them anything, you need to stop trying to give advice to that person. Stop trying to help a person. Stop trying to inform or do anything else with a person who does not want to hear it, at least if they don't want to hear it from you. Stop trying. That's my advice to you. Yeah, that's how you do it. In football, American football that is, do you force, if you were a quarterback or if you watch a game, do you ever see a quarterback try to force a pass to a wide receiver who is double covered and obviously not open? A good quarterback's probably not going to do that. Even if that's the greatest receiver in the league, you're probably not going to force it if the receiver is not open most of the time. Why? Because those bad passes, those bad decisions turn into, in football, they call it an interception. The other team catches the ball. That's not supposed to happen. At Penn State Abington, my freshman year of college, we were in practice and we were working on a particular play. And on this particular play, a player would receive the ball on the wing, this is outside the three-point line, and the first option in the play was to pass the ball down low into our center so he could get the ball down on the block and do his thing on the block. Now, any of you who's played on a basketball team or coached the basketball team, you know how it is in practice, that when you're trying to work on a certain play, the players who are playing defense in practice, they know the play. They know where the ball's supposed to go. Excuse me. They know where you're going to go with the ball. They know who you're trying to pass it to. They know the entire play, so they're going to jump the pass, quote unquote. Meaning the pass that you're supposed to make, they're going to be waiting for you to make that pass so they can steal the ball. And your job, I guess, on offense in practice, this is a part of basketball practice I never got. Why do we work on the play when the defense already knows the play? Because we know in the game, the defense is not going to know the play as well as they know it in practice. But anyway, that's a topic, I guess, for some basketball coach to figure out. But I was the player on the wing one particular day in practice, and we're trying to throw the ball into the post, and our center was this guy named Steve. So I'm trying to throw it into Steve, and the ball's getting deflected, the ball's getting knocked away, the ball's getting stolen, the pass is just not getting to Steve. So over and over, we're working on this play. I would be trying to throw it in there, it's not working. Other players would be trying to throw it in there, it's not working. We kept trying to throw the ball into Steve in practice, but the defense, our teammates, knew what the play was. They knew we were trying to throw to Steve, so they were doing everything they could to keep the ball from getting into Steve's hands, and it was working. And eventually the coach, he just yelled out to us, "It's not there. The pass is not there. Stop trying to throw the ball to a player who's not open." I'm telling you, I'm giving you this anecdote as an analogy. Also with the quarterback throwing to a wide receiver in football analogy, if the recipient is not open to receive the pass, stop trying to throw the ball to him. So if we could end the episode right there on that point. If you're dealing with a person who you believe needs some information or some help or some advice or some whatever you got for them that you know would help them, but they are not open to getting it, stop trying to throw them the ball because they're not open. All right, you're trying to pass the ball to a teammate who doesn't want the ball. Any of you play basketball, watch basketball, coach basketball, you've seen or been in games where it was late in the game, it's a high pressure game, there's a lot of people watching, there's a lot on the line, relatively speaking, and there were certain players in that game, not on the bench, but in the game, who didn't want the ball. They don't want the ball because they don't want the pressure. They might be afraid they're going to turn it over. They don't want to shoot it. They just want to go and hide in the corner if they could, but for whatever reason they're still in the game. They don't want the ball. Don't pass them the ball because they don't want it. All right, you got to play basically as if that person's not on the court. Are you playing 4-on-5 at this point? Not everybody wants the ball, ladies and gentlemen. Just because even if they're wide open, some people don't want the ball. Some people don't want to shoot. They're open, as they say in basketball, coaches will say, he's open for a reason. All right? There's a reason why some players don't get covered by the defense. They don't want the ball. Even if you pass it to them, they're not going to shoot it. So even if you gave the information to this person who you know needs it, this person who needs to hear what you had to say, even if you gave it to them 100% and you said it perfectly, it was the most eloquent talking to you've ever given to a human being in your life, they're not going to do anything with it. You're going to pass them the ball, they're going to pass it right back to you. So you did all that for nothing. So the number 1 point, the number 10 point, the number 1,000 point that I'm giving to any of you who maybe you even listened to this podcast, or you read a book, or you went to some class, or you just heard some anecdote, or you saw some post on Instagram, something that was really good, and you're like, damn, I know the perfect person who really needs to hear this right now. Listen, you can try to give it to them, but they don't want the ball, they don't want the ball. Okay, and I don't care how hard you pass it, how perfect the throw is, how much you explain to them why it would make sense for them to open their hands and catch the ball. If they don't want the ball, stop trying to pass them the ball. Okay, this is on you. This is not on them. And any of you who's new to listen to this podcast, you understand it. I want you to understand that the angle from which we talk about every topic on this show is not them, it's us. It's never the other guy or the other girl, it's always you. Now, while we may talk about our dealings with other people or in situations and whatever you may be going through in life through 1,100 plus episodes of this podcast, we talk about a lot of things that deal with other people, but we always come back home to us. We always come back home to that mirror because we can't control what other people do. And today's episode is a prime example. You can't control the fact that one of your best friends doesn't want to read books, and you just read 10 books in the last 3 months that are all amazing, that will help his life, but he don't want to read no books. Listen, you can't force that on him. And if he don't want to read books, listen, you can think whatever you want to think about him, but it's not his responsibility to be open to your ideas. It's your responsibility to do what you need to do for yourself. You could be the example. If he wants to follow it, if he wants to read books, I'm sure he knows you read and he'll call you. All right, and until or unless he gives you that call, all right, you just keep doing what you need to do. All right, 'cause you can't control that other person. Point number 2, today's topic is how to give advice to someone who thinks they know it all, or someone who thinks they know more than you, or someone who's just not open to hearing the shit that you have to say. Point number 2, but let's just say, all right, let's just putting aside what I said in point number 1. All right, let's just say you decided to ignore that, right? Excuse me. Let's just say that you really want to help this person, despite this individual's foolishness, despite their lack of willingness to listen. Let's say it's just like you just decided this is a desperate situation and you really need to help a person who seems to not want help, and you decide, you have put your foot down and determined that you're going to help them anyway. All right, maybe as a loved one, maybe as a family member, maybe as your spouse, maybe as your son or your daughter, maybe as someone in your neighborhood who you can see is headed for self-destruction if they don't get this information, and you want to get it to them anyway. So what do? How can you get that information to that person when they really need it, but they really don't want it? Here's what you do. You need to learn to take the indirect route to informing a person. And I think this could be point number 1 actually also. So option 1 is just stop trying to give information to somebody who doesn't want it, and they'll eventually come find you when they're looking for it. Eventually, if they decide to ever look for it. Most people never will, but the few who do, they know you the person who's into all that, whatever all that is, they'll come find you. But let's say there's somebody you really need to get it to right now. It's urgent. You got to be indirect with them. Being indirect means doing things such as asking questions, such as sharing information, but not in a you need this type of way, but in a maybe this is interesting type of way. Maybe here's why you might be interested in this. Here's something about this that would grab your attention type of way. Sharing something with someone in a way that makes it seem like it was their idea and not your idea, because we already know that person has already demonstrated to you, clearly communicated to you, they're not interested in your ideas. So you better stop trying that. How about try giving them some of their own ideas? It's really your idea, but you make it seem like it's theirs. So instead of berating a person or attacking a person or just trying to pound somebody upside their head with your knowledge and information that they don't want, let the truth be demonstrated rather than explicated. This is something that Robert Greene talks about in his book, 48 Laws of Power. He stresses using the indirect route to achieve your aims many times in life, because if we try to be too direct with human beings, listen, anybody's going to get defensive if you get a little bit too direct with them. Most people will. Not because they're defensive people, not because anything wrong with them or anything wrong with you. It's just human nature. If you come straight at somebody with something that they weren't asking for, they're going to resist it. That's just the way that it works. Any of you salespeople out there who are listening, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You got to learn how to come indirect with people to insinuate your ideas, insinuate your information and your knowledge in such a way that a person is more open to it than if you just try to come right in their face with it, because everybody's going to defend themselves if you come straight at them with anything that they didn't want. A basketball coach, for example, I would see this. A coach will pull a player out of a game, and as that player is on his way to the bench or her way to the bench, the coach will stop the player and ask them, hey, do you know why you're coming out of the game? Do you know what mistake you made that caused me to pull you out of the game? And usually the player knows, like they didn't box out, they weren't in the right place on defense, they took a shot that they weren't supposed to take, they missed the layup. It was some mistake that the coach has already told the player or the team, you make this mistake, you're not going to be playing. That player went and made that mistake, so the coach says, you know why you're coming out of the game, right? And the player says, yes, I know. And the coach says, okay, sit down. Indirect. This is the coach not berating the player in the middle of the game, not cussing him out in front of everybody, not making a big show about it, just saying to the player, you know what mistake you made, don't you? And the player says, yes, I do. Okay, sit down. Now think about that mistake. Maybe you'll get back in the game. That's an indirect way of sharing information with a person so that you know that they know that you know what it was. Now here's a note that I want to give you about this taking the indirect route to informing people, an indirect route to insinuating information in the mind of a person who is seemingly not open to it. This option requires a high level of patience and also a high level of communication skill. And I want to be frank with you that many people simply don't have either, let alone both. Patience and communication skill, meaning just because you're excited about it today, it might take 6 months for that person to get excited about it. Half as excited as you are right now. And you got to have a skill of communication to where you can be indirect. You can indirectly share some information with a person in a way that it doesn't seem like it's coming from you, and they'll actually be open to it. That takes skill. That's not something that doesn't come naturally to most people. So this one here, you can use this, but you might need some training. You might need to strategize this one a little bit. You might need to think it out before you start. Most people should just stick to point number one and just stop trying to give information to people who don't want it. You could also use point number three, which I'm gonna tell you about in a moment. But if you're gonna use this second point, being indirect, taking an indirect route to giving people what you want to give them, this requires some skill. I mean, if you're not sure you have that skill, you probably don't have it, but it doesn't mean it can't be acquired. It's a skill, not a talent. So you can acquire it, but you gotta make the investments in order to get that skill. Now, is it worth it for you? If you really, and that's why I qualified this point the way that I did, that it's something that you really just say, like, I have to get this information to this person, but they're not open to it, then you need to sharpen your skills of communication so that you can indirectly get something to somebody without them even realizing that it's coming from you. Point number three, you can get some books on communication to help you with that. Point number three, my full reading list, before I get to point number three, is at dreallday.com/read. So communication skills, plenty of books that I've read on that. Again, dreallday.com/read, full reading list will give you some good starting points and ending points. Point number three, today's topic is how to share information with a person who is just not into it, person who thinks they know it all, person who really doesn't want to hear it, at least not from you. Point number three is you gotta let them learn on their own. This is a cousin to point number one. See, you can't take ownership of another person's development. I wanna say that once more, because I made this episode specifically for people who ask me these kind of questions. Like, I know somebody who really needs this help, they really need this information, but they're not really listening, they don't seem to really be open. You cannot take ownership of another person's development. And this doesn't have to be about advice or knowledge or personal development or anything. You could be an athlete and have a teammate who has a whole lot of talent, but they don't want to work out the way that you want to work out. It's not your responsibility to make them want to train the way that you want to train. Like, you can't make them want to do it. I want you to understand something. There are hundreds of thousands of people out there who could really benefit from listening to the Work on Your Game podcast or reading a book that's authored by Dre Baldwin. Some of those people are out there looking for it, and it's my job to market and promote myself and my stuff so that so I can actually reach those people who are looking for it. There's some people who want to hear what I talk about on this podcast who just don't know about the podcast. So it's my responsibility to make sure they know about it. All right, we'll say that maybe 20% of the people who need to hear what I talk about actually want to hear what I'm talking about. Do you understand what I just said there? Rewind it if you don't. The other 80% of people who need it, but they don't want it, you expose them to 5 minutes of this podcast, they don't want to hear anymore. Not because I'm bad at what I do, but because they're the double cover wide receiver. They're not open. All right, my freshman year coach said, the pass is not there. You can't force the pass to people who don't want it. And this is what I tell people when it comes to any type of marketing, promotion, sales. Sell to your buyers. Any of you who've read anything about sales, you have probably heard the truth that it's much easier to make a repeat sale to a past customer than to make an initial sale to a new customer. Why is that? Because the past customer has already decided on you. They've already decided that they know, like, and trust you enough to open up their wallet or their checkbook or pull out their credit card and put their information in on some form on some website in order to get what you're offering. They've already told you that. Clearly demonstrated it to you. It's much easier to get them to do it again than it is to get a person who's never done it to do it the first time. That's what I mean by selling to your buyers. This podcast here, I don't make this podcast to sell anyone on the idea that what I talk about here is valuable. I'm talking to the people who already know it's valuable, who have already decided, you know what, I like this right here. I'm gonna subscribe and listen to the next one and the next one and the next one. And every episode, And I want you to understand something. So you might be asking yourself, well, Dre, if you're only selling to the people who've already decided that they like it, how are you going to get new listeners to the podcast? Well, every episode, there's somebody listening to this one right now who never heard of me before today. And they're going to listen, and they're going to decide, do I want to listen to another one? Is this guy, what I think about this guy? Maybe let me listen to one more. Let me see what he's about. Some people gonna listen to it and say within the first 10 minutes, this dude's amazing. I'm listening to everything he ever put out. And then some people gonna listen to this for 2 minutes and say this dude ain't shit. I'm never listening to him again. You gotta sell to your buyers. So while I'm selling to the buyers, when I make these episodes, I'm recording this for the people who've been listening. I'm recording this for people who've been subscribed, who've been leaving reviews and reading my books and buying my product. Those are people who I'm talking to when I record this. Now, every episode, maybe a few new people come in. Maybe 15 people are listening to this now. This is their first ever episode of this podcast. And 10 of those 15, next time, this won't be their first episode anymore because they decided that they're in. So now they've come in, they joined, right? They're part of the group now. But understand that I wasn't recording to try to get a new person to listen. I was recording to talk to the people who are already sold. The new people are going to come in on the perimeter of what I'm already doing. They're going to say, I want to be a part of this. How do I become a part of this? All right, you hit that subscribe button. Now you're a part of the circle. Now next episode, the circle is a little bit bigger, right? Because we added some new people. Now there's going to be some new people standing on the fringes on the next episode, and they're going to be thinking, all right, what do I think? And a few of them are going to come in. And each episode, the circle's going to get a little bit bigger, but each time, I'm not looking at the people on the fringes of the circle hoping that they decide to come in. I'm talking to the people in the middle of the circle. And see, each episode, the person who's on the fringes of the circle today, 100 episodes from now is going to be in the middle of the circle. In episode number 1500, they're going to be in the middle of the circle. So you understand the circle gets bigger on its own. I don't have to go out and try to promote to the people outside of it. I talk to the people inside of it because they already bought. I'm selling to my past customers. I'm reselling to people who already bought. I'm not trying to sell to the people who haven't bought anything yet. I'm dealing with the warm leads, not the cold leads. You understand? So with your, whatever it is you want to share with another person, share it with somebody who wants it. Share it with the warm lead. Those of you not familiar with sales, a warm lead is a person who's already interested in your product or service. They've already demonstrated that they're interested. A warm lead could be someone who comes to your website and they sign up for the email newsletter, or whatever form you got on your site, or for the free giveaway that you have on your site. A person who subscribes to your YouTube channel is a warm lead. A person who's taking any action that demonstrates they are interested in you, a voluntary action on their part that demonstrates that they're interested in you, makes them a lead. Okay? Somebody buys from you, they're a lead. Somebody subscribes to you, they're a lead. Somebody sends you an email, that's a lead. Somebody is laughing at your joke, you're giving a speech and somebody laughs at your joke, the people who laugh are the leads. The people who ain't laughing, they ain't the leads. Okay? Excuse me. Any of you who's giving a speech, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so talk to the people who are already in. Whenever I go somewhere, I give a speech, if I'm close enough to the audience that I can see faces and I can see reactions to the things that I say, I look for the people, you know who I make the most eye contact with? The people who are nodding their heads when I make a point. The people who laugh when I make a little joke. The people who laugh at stuff that I didn't even think was funny. But when I say something that I know is funny and I look at somebody and they don't laugh at all, I'm like, okay, they're not a lead. I'm not gonna look at them ever again the rest of the speech. I'm looking at the people who already bought, people who already sold. You need to do the same thing. And understand, as I just explained to you, when you continue to sell to the buyers, the people who already are in on you, other people will come in on the fringes. They're gonna watch from the sideline because they wanna kind of test the product. Let me see what's going on here. Some of them are gonna turn around and walk away because they're like, this is not for me. But some of them are gonna come in. They're gonna come in and grab a seat and say, you know what, I wanna be a part of this. And then the next time, they're already in. They're part of the in group. See, once you're in, you're part of the group. Now the next time, you're not new anymore. And now you're selling to them, or you're selling to them again because they already decided that they're buying. Let's recap today's topic, which is how to give advice to someone who thinks they know it all, a person who thinks they know more than you, and a person who's just not trying to hear what you're trying to offer. Point number one, stop trying. Stop trying to give information to people who don't want it. Okay? If you're trying to give advice or help or anything to a person who does not want it, you're trying to force a pass to a double cover wide receiver in an NFL game. It's probably going to end up an interception. You're going to get benched for throwing bad passes. You're a basketball player trying to force a pass to one of your teammates who's not open. You're going to lead the league in turnovers. You're going to get benched and you're not going to get in the game anymore. Stop trying to do that. Point number two. Well, let's say you really want to help this person despite their foolishness, despite this person's lack of ability to listen. You just want to help them because for whatever reason, they just need somebody to mentor them, and eventually maybe they'll figure things out in their lives. What do? Take the indirect route. Thing about the indirect route is it requires a high level of, first of all, patience, which many people don't have, and second of all, a high level of communication skill, which many people also don't have. But you can learn both of those. You go to dreallday.com/read. At least on the communication skill part, you can get started. And for the patience part, I'd suggest you get a meditation app like Calm or Headspace. Point number 3. Most people should stick to point number 1 and point number 3. I'm gonna keep it real. Point number 3, let people learn on their own. Let them figure things out on their time, at their pace, if they ever decide to figure things out. Most of you have been alive long enough to know, and you dealt with enough people to know that some people just never get to the point where they want to learn. They never get to the point where they want to do what you're doing. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It just means they're different from you. Some people just never get to that point, and you just got to be all right with that. Let them learn on their own if they choose to. Let them fall on their face on their own if they choose to do that. You cannot take ownership of another person's development. You should take more than 49% of another person's ownership, and when they come to 51, you keep dialing back till you're down to 0 and they're taking 100%. There are hundreds of thousands of people out there who could benefit from what I talk about on this podcast every day. Some of them are looking for it. It's my job to reach those some, but the others ain't my job. 20% of the people who need to hear this podcast, who never heard of me, I'm gonna reach them. The other 80%, they need it, but they don't want it. So I'm not forcing the pass to a double cover wide receiver. They're not open. Like my freshman coach said, it is not there. Stop forcing the pass. Now, what's going on in the game group, people? The game group, for those of you who don't know, main focus is discipline. The discipline that will create your ability to execute the strategies that lead to results. Because really, that's just the bottom line of what we're here for. Working on your game is a discipline. And there needs to be a strategy in place, meaning you're not just doing a whole bunch of random things hoping that something works, but actually you put a strategy in place, which doesn't guarantee that you're going to get results. But when you have a strategy, you can look at what you're doing, look at the steps of your strategy and see where are the flaws, where are things not working, where are things going off the rails, make your adjustments along the way, and then you get to your results. That's what we do there in the game group. We focus on areas of development, in the business area, the personal area, and any of you who's an athlete, focus on the athletic area. So whatever your challenge is, if you've been trying to figure out the roadmap to how do I actually do this, because we know you got the information. You listen to this podcast, I'm giving you the information every single day. So you don't have a lack of information. You're not joining the game group because you need more information. Okay, because I didn't put out more free information than any internet guru you can name. Name all of them. I didn't put more out than all of them put together. So information is not what you're after. If you're looking for the discipline to actually execute a strategy that produces a result, that's what we do in the game group. There's a forum there where you can post your questions, have your questions answered in detail by me. Maybe you have some other members of the game group who will come in and offer their suggestions as well. And there's a lot of other stuff we offer there. Get all the information on the game group at dreallday.com/game group. And I'll see you in tomorrow's episode. Work on your game. dreallday.com.